Hi viewers, I'm Dr. Elizabeth Varshapon. Welcome to the channel. On the occasion of Women's Day, I have with me a very dynamic lady with me. She was a Commonwealth Master Scholar at the London School of Economics with a PhD in Women's Studies and a very rich portfolio involving the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. She has dedicated her career to examining gender inequalities in the IT sector, education, and beyond. I cordially invite Dr. Priyanka Ma'am, Associate Professor, School of Arts, Humanities, and Social Sciences at Chanakya University. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you, Dr. Elizabeth. Very kind of you.
So, ma'am, as I said, you're very dynamic, talented with a rich portfolio, research portfolio. So, first, I wanted to ask you, why did you go for women's studies? What attracted you? Like, I did my doctorate in economics, so I was just inspired. My grandma's sister. I always looked upon her. So, is that something, anything interesting? So, why did you choose women's studies?
Yeah, thank you. Very interesting question to begin with. In fact, my whole journey into academics has been shaped by serendipity. And after I did my master's in UK in sociology, I was interested in exploring more about sociology, and I thought perhaps I would look at social policy. And I came back to India, returned and worked in the government policy sector, where, as fate would have it, I was doing internship with the Ministry of Women and Child Development in Government of India. And there is where I got the first-hand exposure into women's issues, gender budgeting. Why do you need the intersectionality angle? Why do you need to take into account gender concerns when you're looking at a program or a policy intervention? And if you are gender blind to in making policy or any program or design, why it will really not impact and have benefit for 50% of the humanity. I also got into an exposure into our daily gender issues, which we think are normalized, but they reflect deeper realities and they need to be problematized, they need to be tackled. And perhaps I thought this connects with me, this resonated with me, and I need to read it, study it, investigate. And that's where I ventured into doing my further studies in the domain of women's studies.
So, ma'am, you mentioned the challenges, the problems that women face. So, probably you must have come across in your whole academic journey or research journey. Maybe back in 2000, this was the biggest problem that women were facing. And probably now, like say in the year 2026, it must be a different problem. So, have you come across, or is it the same problem that still we are, for example, I could say killing female child, it's female infanticide. So this has been there, but still I see even now it's prevailing. So something that you have come across in 2000 and still we see in 2026, or people have not noticed about maybe a small problem like that. Have you come across?
Yeah, I think, as times are advancing, time passes by, uh, the, the intensity of the problem might have reduced or changed, but the problem persists. Firstly, because these problems are age old. The problems that you talked about relating to, say, gendered understanding of care work, when it comes to childcare, when it comes to works like cooking, cleaning, basic social reproductive work that sustains the society. When it comes to gender pay gap, issues like female infanticide, feticide, early marriage, child marriage, um, daily affairs of discrimination at homes, outside homes, at workplace. I think these issues have been very old. They continue to persist. However, I would definitely uh, be careful about saying that the degree, the intensity has been changing. For instance, there is an increasing awareness today that your daughter needs to study, needs to go to school or higher education. They are equally capable as your child, as your son. There is also an increasing awareness that it is immoral, it is improper, it is wrong. It's illegal child discrimination, infant mortality, uh, feticide. There is an increasing awareness, and this internalization is taking time. Dowry, for instance, I'm not saying that it is not existing, but there is an awareness, and that awareness is leading to change in behavior. Changes in behavior take a long time, but the beginning has, of course, been noticeable. In my own life, I have witnessed the issue, the problem of lack of mentorship. For instance, in my family, I belong to a very educated family. My father is, a very qualified engineer who headed various government and private organizations of repute. And my mother, of course, was a housewife, educated, and she chose. They had an understanding that she would, because we were five siblings, she had to take care of the household, and my father and mother had this understanding, very traditional, a male breadwinner, female caregiver sort of a model. But my mother always ensured that we become economically independent and we grow our cerebral capacity to be economically independent. That doesn't mean that equate it only with paid work. It means that you pursue what you'd like to pursue and earn an income out of, it doesn't have to be more or less, but what you find your calling in. So she ensured that we are able to uh, find meaning in what we want to pursue, be it academics or be it corporate life, or be it if you want to become an artist or a painter. So my parents were very welcoming to that idea. But there was, because I was born and brought up in Prayagraj, um, and there is nobody in my family who was in academics. And for me to navigate the world of academics, where to do PhD from, the process, how to write a proposal, how to select a supervisor, basic things were all trial and error. And how do you apply for a job? What are the university you should prefer? How do you scale up the career ladder? From basic journal writing to augmenting your research was something which I had to learn by trial and error. If I had mentorship, I think it would have been easier for me and better for me. That's where I think. So I think today this problem continues to persist because for instance, my research is on gender in tech, women in IT sector, and I see that there are a lot of women today at the entry level in IT sector, but as you climb up the ladder, for example, at the mid-organizational level, at the C-suite level, the percentage and numbers keep declining. There is a leaky pipeline there. So what is happening to all these STEM graduates who form 46 to 48% at the entry level? Why are they reducing to 28% at the mid organization level, or less than 2% as a C-suite level? So during my research, one of the major findings was there's a lack of sponsorship and mentorship. They do not find role models or examples of women leading there. And therefore, it's not motivating for them enough that they can also chart the journey. Or as a woman, advances in the career trajectory, she also advances in her personal trajectory, from becoming a wife to becoming a mother, choosing parenthood. And these priorities compete. And how do you balance out these priorities? Where does the role of your family or your spouse come in? I think I still see that persisting even today, and that continues to persist. Again, there is an awareness and understanding among spouses and families today that women need support there, they need encouragement there, they need mentorship at workplaces, they need more inclusion. The workplaces have to take care of these roles of women and make their male employees sensitive to the needs of their women employees or their spouses at home. but it is at a slow pace. So that is what my response is to your question.
Okay, ma'am. So if we're discussing right now the challenges and talking about mentorship, on this account of Women's Day, what would you like to tell women researchers or budding researchers like me and academicians and corporate level leaders? Everything only exclusive for women. Can you give your maybe small, yeah, since I said it's a Women's Day special, so yeah, can you give us some tips?
Yeah, I mean, research is my interest, area when it comes to academics. More than teaching, it's for research, which takes my time. My research and teaching are in a very, very reciprocal relationship with each other. One feeds into the other. But yeah, to respond to your question about research, I think as academics, as women academics, if you are looking at um, climbing up the career ladder, taking up the leadership positions in academics, I think research is one thing that you really need to invest your time and effort in. And when I'm talking about investing time and effort, there has to be a proper planning to it. By this, by saying proper planning, what I mean or intend is you need to look at your research journey in a span of about 20, 30 years, not as something which is a project you're taking up for a year or a paper you're writing for 3 months, but look at your research area or a journey as something that you will pursue for 15 to 20 years so that you built in your expertise into it by continuous research projects and publication. And what is the output that you're looking at? Is it theoretical? Is it empirical? Or is it both? So I always would tell my juniors or my colleagues whom I mentor that always begin with an end goal of your research in mind. Are you looking for a contribution to a policy? Are you looking for a scale development? Or you're looking out for in the long term, that is, not in the short term? What are you looking for? If you're researching in sustainability, what is the impact or output that you're looking for? If you're sitting in 2026, I'm not looking at 2036. And once you have the end goal clear, then chart the various phases and stages. So say begin yearly and then you begin make it quarterly, then make it monthly. So you know that towards your end goal, this is how you are taking the steps. And therefore, whatever contribution, whatever conference you're attending, whatever paper you're reading, whatever paper you're publishing, it's actually being channelized or basically leading to you to contribute to materialize the output that you have identified. It's possible that in a span of 5 years or maybe a couple of years, your output or end goal itself might change. But having that goalpost in the very beginning really helps you to focus. Most of the time, I see, and even in my journey, I have, this is trial and error and learning from research workshops and talking to various supervisors and senior scholars that anchors you, an end goal anchors you. Rather than publishing on one topic related to your area for say 3 months and then shifting again to say because there's a call that interests you or a project that interests you, you will not build your expertise. And there will be more of expansion, but not the intensity or depth, which is very much required today. If you have to equate your academic work with expertise in some area, for example, say Jeffrey Sachs is taken as a sustainability expert these days, or Philip Altbach in education, or professors like Indra Hirve, Indra Ramarao, who are great feminist scholars. They are there because they have invested time and effort, years and years over into that same topic, churned it around, and contributed. They have contributed through their social policy interventions on the field or development of any form of output. So I would definitely endorse and advise my fellow researchers and colleagues to plan their research journey in such a manner. Keep revisiting, and reminding yourself that this is your end goal. And then from your end goal, you make your Gantt chart or you make your trajectory of your research. This is what I'm looking at in 5 years, and break it down to 3 years, break it down annually, so that you're anchored. You might shift institutions, but then your research focus remains the same. And that's where journals appreciate. I'm the associate editor of a Scopus quartile one journal called Gender, Work and Organization. And when I look at reviewers there, or when I look at people who are publishing there, you will find that they have invested years of effort and energy to developing expertise, so that after a few years, you're not only recognized, but you have the potential. You've developed the capability to contribute impactfully to that field.
So, ma'am, you were just telling me about being an associate editor. So, as an editor, as a reviewer also, you must be knowing how the process is. What do actually journals look for? So, I'm submitting a paper and you being an associate editor or reviewer. What do you actually look for? Obviously, it's the content, what the quality of the content really matters. And being a podcast for researchers, I just want to know exactly what do reviewers and editors look for.
Excuse me. Yeah. So that's a very clear thing. We look at very clear certain categories. The first thing that we look at, what is it that you're doing, and why is it that you are choosing to do what you're doing? What you're doing should be very clear, and you have to establish the rationale and logic of why you're doing what you're doing. And once that is clear, then we look at the uniqueness. It should not be a repetitive piece of work, but it should have its unique. It can be enriching a theory or it can be an empirical contribution, but you definitely need to be very clear about how is your publication in the journal contributing to the journal in development of the scholarship and an empirical output in terms of policy or any other social field intervention. So that's the first thing that I would look at as a reviewer. Then comes how well you have located your work in the academic literature, which means how well you are aware of the recent works in the area of your contribution. How are you interacting? How are you in conversation with those works and scholars? How are you enhancing or critiquing? Which means that you should have given time to reading, referencing, engaging with the existing scholarship in the area of the work. And once you have done that, it strengthens your argument. So if I know that, yes, Dr. Elizabeth has worked for 10 years in this area and she's referred this 50 other scholars, and I'm familiar with their work, I would know where is the gap, what they overlooked or what they looked deeply into. If there's something that you've looked deeply into, I would like to give my angle or enhance that or critique it. If there's something which you've overlooked, there is a gap, that gives me a space to work on, and that's the contribution. So theoretical clarity, engagement, immersion is very necessary. After that comes how you've organized your work, your structuring, your objectives, etc., in which methodology really takes the key part. How clearly, how effectively you have structured your methodological approach, the tools and techniques you've used, whether they're appropriate to the objective or not, the limitations of your research, the sampling, the analysis of the data, all that then comes later. But the first thing that I would, through the medium of this podcast, tell all the fellow researchers, when you're looking at publishing in quartile one Scopus index journals, be very clear about what you are contributing and why. Is it unique or it's just a repetition? Once you're clear, I think the rest of the journey sort of smoothens out.
Thank you, ma'am, for that answer. So, ma'am, I was just thinking in economics, we generally we play with numbers, we play with more to do with quantitative. Very few you can find papers which is related to conceptual framework or qualitative. So one of your paper, I think, was on qualitative. Do you have anything in mind that, okay, for a contribution to the journal, especially, is it qualitative? Few have told me that bibliometric and case studies don't sell much in the journal. So do you have anything like that? Only writing qualitative or quantitative would be much more effective, or is a mixed approach? So do you have anything in mind like that?
Um, um, See, both approaches have their own strengths
Mm-hmm.
and limitations. And whether you are choosing qualitative or quantitative approach to seeking response or answer to your research question depends upon what your research question is. If you are someone who is looking at experiences of women during pandemic who were working from home, for instance, uh, a survey technique alone will not capture the minute details, the gendered realities of households, so to say, the experiences or breakdown of mental health, the experiences of spousal support, family cooperation. Therefore, it's important to look at what your research objective is and then match it. Which approach fulfills your research objective? That's one. Secondly, I would always encourage it, if there is time and resources, to go for mixed methods, where you blend in the strengths of qualitative as well as quantitative approaches, and look at how both can be triangulated to support the data or evidence. So, for instance, if you're looking at how universities are aligning with SDG goals, an area that I work on, I would use a mixed methods approach where I would run a survey about mapping of curriculum with SDG goals, how many research outputs are related to SDG goals, what kind of campus outreach activities are conducted by NSS or Office of Student Affairs, and how is that connected to SDG goals, etc. And then I would go with a semi-structured interview guide, talk to sustainability experts in the university, IQAC cell, registrar's office, faculty, students. So then I collect the data and then I triangulate the findings that not only gives credibility but strengthens my entire argument that, hey, look, my findings come from both sources, therefore the strengthening. So triangulation is something which is encouraged, we look at, it increases the reliability, validity, credibility of your study. Thirdly, if you are looking at a policy paper, contribution to policy, it's very important to put a number, a figure to what you're wanting to say. If you are in a room which is full of policy experts, you will not be given entry or a chair, a seat at the table until unless you talk in terms of metrics that, hey, look, this SDG index is 4.5, or this is the Gini coefficient, or this is it, and therefore then you deconstruct what it is. So it's very important to also engage with statistics, with data, with numbers precisely, because it is easy to communicate, it is quick to communicate, and then you tell the story, the picture, the interpretation behind it, which is supported by your qualitative data.
Since in the first episode, first you spoke about mental health, and you spoke about recently also. I just want to ask you, one of your recent paper work discusses the mental load, right, at the intersection of migration, motherhood, and work. And when I say mental health, there are, I could say right now, two categories. One is for researchers, one is especially for women. Though we are very, we still in a society where we are kind of reluctant still to talk about mental health and mental stigma that researchers what they face, because from the outside world, what generally people think that there's a, what you people do, what you PhD people are doing, why are you taking 5 years, why are you taking 8 years? So very common questions. For example, I took 5 years, so this is a question which I've always faced from my family members, not from my family but from my relatives around. What are you doing, submit your thesis, so what is a big deal in it? They don't understand what I'm going through is must be a very difficult and a tough journey. So I did a kind of episodes where I spoke about the mental health, usually what researchers face. So what is your opinion about researchers? Of course, you go through a lot, and especially being a woman, what do you how do you bridge it?
Yeah, this is a very important question, and I would like to answer it in certain segments. Let me first tell you about my perception of whether mental health is talked about, or is still a stigma, or is still something hushing. Interestingly, in especially in metropolitan cities, in Tier 1 cities, this is becoming a conversation. People are identifying, recognizing that there is something called mental health, that your mind also indicates whether it's healthy or not, because earlier it was very unthought of, not only unexplored, because it was unthought of. One couldn't think of what is mind in health, but now it there is awareness. This awareness has led to recognition that if you're having mood disorders, or a lot of swings, or you're not feeling okay, you're having suicidal tendencies, some sort of intervention is required. You can see that there is rise in counseling centers, there is rise in such kind of clinics, including AI interventions and buddies and helps around on digital platforms. Institutions, organizations, universities are having these counseling centers compulsorily for their staff, employees, and students. This is about metropolitan cities in Tier 1, but if you go to Tier 2 and 3, there is still a big gap there. There's still a stigma. The recognition is lacking, therefore the identification is lacking. But it is slowly percolating, because thanks to the focus by NIMHANS on various workshop and various other NGOs which are doing a great piece of work in awareness, government funding and intervention, this is becoming a conversation. Just like menstrual leave has become a conversation. And conversations are very important, because conversations identify that there is a problem. And then once you identify, you start recognizing, reflecting on your own life, and this is where you need help. So that's the first thing. Now, the second thing is about what you said is about uh, mental health in terms of as related to a woman. Um, the so women is a very heterogeneous category. There are so many intersectionalities here. There are so many categories intersecting in terms of making an identity of a woman, that it's very difficult to homogenize. But there are certain biological phases and stages in the life of a woman where she is definitely vulnerable to mental health issues, and that is where more support, active support, is required. There are certain experiences or phases in all our lives. For example, you talked about taking long years or more years to PhD. It's a very stressful phase. You are grappling with yourself, your research. There is resource constraint of time. There is resource constraint of finance. You are wanting to contribute something academically. It is a very serious degree. Your supervisor has his or own career trajectory and requirements. So it's a very stressful period, and after some time you might feel lost, that all 3 years are in a vain, you are at a knot. So not only women, but any researcher requires resource support, and supervisor plays a very important role there. Your spouse, your family plays an important role there. So similarly, there are other phases in our lives. For example, when you give birth. My son is 1.6 years old. So when I gave birth, I that was my vulnerable time where I required, I had my own fears and apprehensions that life is dependent on me. Am I doing okay enough? Am I doing all right? What am I able to really understand? So that's where you require more support. You require conversations around, you require affirmations. So that has been a vulnerable period in my life. And I think as a woman, there are certain phases and stages that we face. It might be related to financial struggle, personal struggle, emotional struggle, romantic struggle, where you need to voice out, speak out, and call for support, ask for support. And why only women? It happens in any human's life. We all require support at some point of the time or the other. And it is just not about going to counseling centers or clinics or psychological or psychiatric interventions. It's also about just having conversation with a friend, with somebody you just confide in, with somebody who can be your mother or your spouse. I studied in London School of Economics. So when I reached there, I was badly homesick. And I'm a social bird. I love socializing, talking to people, interacting to people, exploring new places. But at the age of 21, I found myself, 23, yeah, I found myself entirely lost in London. I've never seen those kind of buildings and places and such a different weather and temperature, lonely, snowy. It was very different. And I really used to break down, doubt myself, doubt the decision. Am I and I had so much of confidence in myself before I took the journey to London that I'd been to Singapore, I'd been to Malaysia, it's another foreign country, I'll make it. But going to London was very different. And when I go to my supervisor, so we had master supervisors used to be attached to a student there. And looking at me and looking at my eyes, which were overwhelmed with stress and tears, she said, Priyanka, I think you need to go, to a counseling center. We do have a student counseling center. And I was coming from a Prayagraj. I did my undergrad in Stella Maris College, Chennai. I had a very different understanding. I said, no, I think I'll be okay. I just need a couple of days to rest. She said, I understand that perfectly, but I think it would do good if you go and have a conversation. And because she was my supervisor, I couldn't say no. The next day, I landed up in that counseling center. And, when I went there, Dr. Elizabeth, all I did was I saw that person's face and I cried. And I just spoke my heart out how I was feeling and about the loneliness, about I have come on a scholarship, my expectations with myself, am I missing classes? I don't know how to navigate the Moodle, which was the learning platform there. And I didn't get the time for a counselor she was a very patient listener, of course. And after 20 minutes of really crying out loud, and she handing over me continuously napkins on napkins, I felt so good. And she said, are you okay? And Priyanka, I said, yeah, I do feel a lot better. I think I do feel that I can think right now. I can sit, take a piece of pen and paper and think, what am I doing? Why am I doing? Where am I going next? And she said, great, all right, that's fairly well. So the mist before my eyes was clear, and she gave me an appointment for next week. But all I didn't go because I didn't require. All I needed was a conversation and venting out because I was so pent up, and I was being so self-judgmental, and then I did really well. I got distinction, and that rest is a journey. But the initial phase, if my supervisor had not handheld me or guided and booked an appointment, I really don't know where would I have been. Maybe lost, sort of lost and found sort of a situation. So it's very important to support each other, feel each other, and normalize it and say it's okay. It's very common to just catch a flu, right? It's very common to feel depressed. It's very common to not be okay. And it's okay to be not be okay. And I'm so happy and elated that in the university where I work and in places where I have worked or my colleagues are working, this conversation is becoming common, normalized, awareness is increasing. And there is a great work by a lot of scholars who are working in this field. Due to this psychology, the interest in psychology as a discipline is really rising.
Ma'am, you were discussing about mental health, mental load. Maybe in one of your paper you have written extensively. So is it the same? Does it mean the same or two different terms?
Yeah, so mental load and mental health are very distinct concepts. And mental load, as the word says, mental load shows a sense of burden. And my research explored this in the context of migration. So when you look at mental load, it is basically the invisible work of planning, strategizing, monitoring, uh, of the physical and mental tasks that is mostly undertaken by women. It has a gendered aspect to it. So we were looking at how migrant mother workers who are basically working and are a mother were actually navigating their migration experience in terms of cultural upbringing of the children, the lack of outsourcing facilities, lack of domestic help. How were they basically reconfiguring their lives around work and home? And what was the role of the spouse there when you migrate as a dual learner couple? And we found that most of this was borne by women, but it changed as they spent more years in the country and whether they made that country home or not. So I will not go into the academic details of it, but mental load is the invisible labor that women put in for monitoring, for strategizing, planning things, uh, for various physical tasks. It may be your child's school, what to prepare, uh, whether this is nutritious or healthy or not, pack the tiffin, get the baby ready on time. So various planning and strategizing work that go behind execution of the physical task. So that is what we looked into, and people are welcome to read the paper to know more, but I'll not go into the details. Because your mental load peaks, it contributes to your mental health. It might have a negative impact on your mental health as well. So yeah, that's what we looked into.
So I wanted to ask you one last question. Since I'm working a little bit with sustainability, the climate change. So there was an article that's saying that climate change, uh, women are going to be more vulnerable to climate change, especially in the field of agriculture. So I was very confused how women are prone to vulnerability due to climate change. Do you have any thoughts about it?
Yeah, so um, any crisis for that matter, if you look at pandemic as a crisis, the consequences were gendered. If you look at any epidemic, swine flu, um, recession as a crisis, the consequences are always gendered. By that, what I mean is it impacts negatively the most vulnerable population the most. So if you look at similarly the climate change, women are very vulnerable to the negative consequences. That said, it's because if you look at the involvement in agriculture, the kind of work that women do, the kind of crops that they grow, the land holding by women farmers, the kind of occupation that they do, that leaves them in a vulnerable spot to experience the worst consequences. They do not have enough social or economic capital to wait over those consequences. And therefore, not only climate, but any crisis. For instance, I looked at pandemic as a crisis on impact on women. Because women were working from home, they were constantly expected to be available for childcare, household labor. Their space of work at home was considered to be very porous, unlike their spouses whom I interviewed, who had a very sacred space of working at home. They were considered to be busy in meetings. Whereas, I had interviewed women who were carrying their laptops to washrooms with the children because the baby needed attention while they were in meetings or calls. So, whose work is prioritized, whose work is considered important, is a very gendered understanding. Similarly, swine flu and even financial crisis of 2008 showed that though both women and men experienced attrition, layoffs, women took a longer time to return to work versus men because there were other variables that come into play. Therefore, similarly, when it comes to any crisis and climate change, which is overarching, if you're looking at people in Africa, in coastal regions, in India, women will be the worst sufferers because they do not have the enough wherewithal to navigate those challenges. And the more, lower in the privileged category you are, that is lower in the caste, lower in the class, lower in terms of urban rural locality, in terms of race, this is intersectionality. The more you are, the more underprivileged you are, the less privileged you are, these intersectionalities intersect and place you at a disadvantage. Yep.
So, ma'am, you have given us so much of insight, say, starting from how methodological triangulation is important is to research, how, especially for women researchers, a good support system is very important. And even in research, you have given as a big idea that you have to concentrate in one particular field, domain, and take the research up. So, when you even spoke about the novelty of the research, how important it is. So, on the basis, I would like to extend my heartfelt thanks and gratitude because I've spent such a long time, just not for me. I also learned a lot, and even the viewers as well. I hope the experience for you in a YouTube channel would be nice and interesting. I hope my questions were also interesting. I hope the viewers also like it. So, thank you so much, ma'am, for your valuable time.
Thank you very much. Thank you for doing this. I had a great time, and I hope that the viewers benefit from our conversation. And I wish you all the very best in your future podcasts.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you so much. So, I
Thank
hope.
you. Thank you, Dr.
I hope all of you like this video. Please like and subscribe our channel. And a big thank you to our Dr. Priyanka. Thank you.